Welcome back. This is continuing my video on the changes to one D&D species and also backgrounds, but rather than just going through the rules of those changes, I'm going to be adding my thoughts about this, mainly because that information is a little bit old and the new books will be coming out this year apparently, and I wouldn't be surprised if it sort of was going to be released in either the new financial year or just before Christmas. Anyway, we were talking about intelligence. It used to be that intelligence would determine how many languages that your character could speak. I think that if we're going to get rid of this idea of species influencing your character genetically, then maybe we could go back to the ability scores having some impact on that as well. Charisma used to have influence on how many hirelings you could have. I don't know if that's really good, because basically surely somebody with a lot of money could have more than their charisma's worth of hirelings. But you get the idea. Let's move on then. Lineage, I think that we could divide that up into what is passed on genetically and what is passed on culturally. So rather than having just lineage or species and background, you could have species genetics, species culture, and background. So the thing that the genetics would pass on would be stuff like dragon-born breath weapon, elvish trance, abilities to climb or swim or fly. Although personally I think there's too much flying now. Flying is overpowered in my opinion. It kind of wrecks the game because a lot of the monsters aren't sort of designed to deal with flying characters. I get it that some people think it's fun, and I get it that some DMs may wish to have a flying campaign in which all of the characters could fly. But like if one character can fly, it creates problems. I'm not saying that there should be no flying in the game, because obviously there's magical items and stuff like that which add to flying. I just am noticing how these days flying is becoming more and more of a thing. Anyway, keen senses, Darkvision, which is basically overprescribed at the moment. Any natural attacks like claws and bites. I don't know if this is controversial. Somebody was saying it is. I don't see why having a claw attack if you're a cat is controversial, but anyway. Damage resistance, any other supernatural boons or things that particular genetics would pass on. It gets into trickier things when we start talking about non-learned skill bonuses. So, okay, fair enough, perception, you might get an advantage for perception because your particular species is very aware of its surroundings. But what about, knowledge in something, or blacksmithing, or whatever it is? I don't think those things can be passed on. Those sorts of learned skill bonuses should be part of the lineage culture. It also includes certain spell-like abilities, and but what I think is quite funny is there's a very common thing in which people who look at other cultures and races of people in real life and give them magical abilities. one has only got to look at sort of the way that we look at exotic races and things like that, and the sort of aura of magic that they might have, you know, like martial arts and medicines and things like that. So I don't want to get too far into it, but I just find that ironic that we're using species as a way to try to combat or avoid racism, but it's still baked in many ways. Anyway, maybe I'm getting off topic, so let's get back. Everybody gets first level feat, so they managed to steal that off humans. Now humans get 2. From what I understand, the feats are changed so that there's leveled feats, so first level feats. From what I've seen, some of them look pretty lame. Once again, martial characters are being nerfed, or their options are not as good. I don't know why 5th edition hates martial characters so much. Used to be they were great, you know. Conan the Barbarian, I actually enjoy playing low magic campaigns, but these days nobody wants them. It's I think there's been a cultural shift, perhaps, with computer games influencing us, or it's a generational thing. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, magic's always been there, it's always been interesting, but there was always a sort of choice between low magic and high magic, but now it just seems like there's a sort of magical creep moving in where everything's magic. It gets a little bit boring, I think, but I get it. Some people might say not having magic is boring. So I think that this feat coming from the background might be a bit too limiting. I get it that we can make up our own backgrounds, and so therefore the choice will be up to the player, but I also think that a lot of people will just take pre-made backgrounds. So, you know, even down to the ability score adjustments. For example, entertainers get +2 charisma. What if you're not playing a bard though? You know, what if do you want that +2 charisma? Couldn't you put that in intelligence? But that wouldn't be thematically the same as a entertainer. I like giving options, but I just worry about this. I agree, like with Pack Tactics, which is another great channel about Dungeons and Dragons stuff, about the fact that martial characters, there doesn't seem to be much in the backgrounds for martial characters. I think we also need to talk about humans. I don't understand how they survive this long. Are humans the most common species in Dungeons and Dragons worlds? I think that they need to be in many worlds because they are the window through which we as humans see the new fantasy world and interact with the other races. So it's like this starting point, and humans are actually one of the most popular races. I actually enjoy playing humans. I like the challenge of being basically unable to see it in a dungeon and not having magical abilities baked into my character, and just stuff like having to sleep, you know. I don't see how humans would survive in a Dungeons and Dragons world with dragons and mind flayers and orcs. I mean, basically back in caveman times, the orcs would have out-cavemanned the humans. They're stronger, they're more healthy, you know. How did humans survive? And so if any species with Darkvision could have just gone in and wiped out humans at a very early time. That's not to mention giants and ogres and things like that. So we also tend to assign human technology like firearms, chemistry, mechanics to gnomes and dwarves, and also we assign magic to elves and dragons. I don't see why the gnomes have got to get human technology. Why can't that be a human thing? That is actually their edge, that they do innovate. So I think I'd like to see humans get a bit of a boost, and some of the species get spells at higher levels, like 3rd or 5th level or whatever. So why can't humans get an extra skill focus or something like that, or an adaptability or something like that at higher levels as well to compensate for this? I think this is related to lifespan too. So basically the species that live the longest, so elves living for 1,000 years or whatever it is, perhaps they're more conservative. Perhaps they don't adapt new technologies as quickly. That, there was a whole thing about fairies not liking iron. Is that because, what if that was sort of given to elves, whereas elves avoided iron because it was a new technology? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see why the long-lived species doesn't seem to have any impact on the game. There's very few reasons to worry about that. Anyway, I also thought it would be funny if orcs actually were long-lived, that's the word I was looking for, and that they had lifespans similar to dwarves or elves, but because they live such violent lives, that's why they usually don't live much past 50. That would be a funny but culturally significant thing, and perhaps even a lesson for the orcs to sort of develop. Maybe there's a player character that realizes this and tries to preach non-violence to the other orcs. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box a little bit. I have played a old dwarf once. There was a locksmith who came out of retirement to adventure as a thief, and that was kind of fun to play a lawful neutral thief that didn't want to pick pockets and stuff like that, but was there to open up all the locks and doors and stuff like that. And that was fun. And he was old and would fall asleep, and I would pretend to have hearing problems. But ironically, in those rules, I think this was 3rd edition, basically as your wisdom increased with age, was it 3rd edition or 2nd edition? Anyway, as your wisdom increased with age, basically your hearing would get better. So that's not true, by the way. I also think we need to talk about Darkvision. It's overused and it's overprescribed, and I don't fully understand it. I understand low light vision. Cats and wolves and things like that can see in darker conditions at a cost to their color perception. I get that. That's fine. But how do species see in places with no light? Basically, there's no light reflecting back into the eyes. How do they see? Usually species that live in complete darkness, their eyes atrophy and they go blind, such as blind fish and things like that. Why aren't all these species that live in the Underdark actually blind? Or why don't, they should have more sunlight vulnerability too. I understand nobody likes to carry torches and that it's a problem because I've played humans, but I basically think everybody getting dark vision is a nerf on humans, and I think we need to rethink that. I know they got rid of low light vision and dark vision as two different things. Maybe we should bring it back. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, because I think this is a big topic, and I think it really has sort of broken the game a little bit, because now everybody gets dark vision. Anyway, I'm running out of time now. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye bye.